أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله
إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدًا عبده ورسوله يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون أوصيكم ونفسي بتقوى الله فإن الله تعالى مع المتقين وبعد. The Prophet alayhi salatu wassalam, as is known to most and has been repeated in many a khutbah and lecture, he said alayhi salatu wassalam, كلكم راع ومسؤول عن رعيته. Each and every one of you, i.e. us, the followers of the Prophet alayhi salatu wassalam, we are responsible for our flock. We are shepherds, and we are responsible for the flock that we are shepherding. And the flock that we are responsible for are those who depend upon us, in brief. And the Prophet ﷺ, he said, إِذَا مَاتَ الْإِنسَانِ انْقَطَعَ عَمَلُهُ إِلَّا مِنْ ثَلَاثٍ صَدَقَةٌ جَارِيَةٌ أَوْ عِلْمٌ يُنْتَفَعُ بِهِ أَوْ وَلَدٌ صَالِحٌ يَدْعُو لَهُ. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, when a person passes away, his actions come to a halt. except for three things. Sadaqah jariyah, a continuous charity that he may have given, whether it's a well that he founded, a masjid that he built, whether it's something that he taught or gave and it continues to grow in his absence, etc. Or knowledge which others benefit from after he has passed away, or a righteous child who makes dua, supplication for him after his death. These two particular statements of the Prophet ﷺ, amongst other things, inform us about the responsibility of parenting and the responsibility of taking care of our children, and the fact that it is an amana. It is a trust that we have been given by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if we think about our own selves and we think back to the way that we were raised, or the conditions or the society that we grew up in, we will very easily come to understand the importance of good parenting. We can see the positive impact of the parenting that we may have received, and likewise, with some reflection for the sake of making changes for our children, we may be able to see some of the negative aspects that we were affected by due to the parenting, whether the generation that raised us or the society, and so on and so forth. And so there is a particular area that most of us, or perhaps I should say many of us, are falling short in when it comes to parenting. And to be frank and to be honest and brutal, there are many areas that we are falling short in, unfortunately. And in fact, perhaps it could be said that the main issue within the Muslim community today is parenting. If the parenting is fixed, most problems will be fixed. Perhaps that may be the case. But that's a discussion for another day, and that requires research, etc., and opinions and qualification. But the area that I would like to focus on today, an area which is relevant to those of us who have children that are going to school, in particular secondary school. It is the area or the aspect of smart devices and smartphones. A smart device nowadays is a device which unfortunately most of us cannot do without. Whether it is for work, whether it is for school, whether it is for entertainment, we are all connected and hooked into these smart devices. And there is a recent article which I briefly mentioned the other evening after Isha. A head teacher from a boys' school in West London, the Fulham Boys' School. This head teacher decided that it was time to ban smart devices, to ban the smart devices from being used in the school, i.e. smartphones. And so from year 7 to 11, the only phone that a child is allowed to carry with themselves in the school is what is referred to in the article a brick phone. Some may refer to it as a burner phone, a dumb phone, whatever you like. But basically a phone which only allows for calls and messages to be received. No internet, no social platforms, no distractions. And the reason for this, he said that giving a smart device to a child was akin to taking away their childhood. His words. He said giving a smartphone to a child was akin to taking away their childhood. Why? Various things. Number one, you're taking away the ability of the child to appreciate the world. And take a child with a smartphone to an area, a beautiful area, they're drawn to the smartphone rather than to nature. You're exposing a child to that which we perhaps as adults were not exposed to until our later years. In fact, for many of us, our children on smartphones and smart devices are exposed to things that we perhaps have not yet been exposed to. This is the reality we'll come to see. So the head teacher of a boys' school who is working with children all the time from the age of 12 until the age of 16, and perhaps they have a sixth form as well, has said that giving a smartphone to a child is akin to taking away their childhood. And so for us, we should be reflecting. And here are some statistics about smart devices. One particular research suggests that giving a child a smartphone is akin to giving them a gram of cocaine, i.e. the impact on the child is like giving the child a gram of cocaine, according to a specialist rehab therapist, i.e. a therapist that specializes in rehabilitation of people that are addicted to drugs. She said giving a smartphone to a child is like giving that child 1 gram of cocaine. She also said that giving a smartphone to a child is just like giving a glass of wine to a child. Why? Because the addiction is quite similar. The addiction is quite similar. And perhaps we can even say, if we look at the illah, the reasoning for the tahrim of khamar, why is it that alcohol is impermissible in Islam? Because it leads to what? To various sins. Ummul khaba'ith, it's referred to. The mother of evil, the mother of wicked deeds. When you give a child a smartphone, what are you exposing them to? What are you exposing them to? First hand, in this masjid, we have dealt with individuals that have become addicted to things in their childhood that perhaps many adults don't know even exist. Today, young children are being groomed. They're being groomed by gangs and initiated into gangs and being turned into drug mules on smartphones via Snapchat. Individuals determining their location based upon their IP address, threatening them, we're going to come to your mother's house if you don't deliver this package for us, and so on and so forth. And that's the start of a criminal lifestyle. And they don't really need to be threatened in such a way anyway. Why? Because of the glamorization of gangsterism. The glamorization that again takes place on what? On these smartphones. With fake individuals leading fake lifestyles, putting up images and videos to suggest that they're happy, living a haram lifestyle, and in reality it's all fake, glamorizes it to these impressionable young minds, and therefore they decide, I want to follow that lifestyle myself. Young children, firsthand, I've seen it firsthand, young children being groomed on their smartphone. Their parents have no idea. Parents have no idea. Parents might even be praying 5 times a day in the masjid. Children, and forgive me for the use of such language with young people around, but children being sexually groomed online via what? Their smartphones. Via their smartphones. Whether they're being targeted by adults or targeted by other young people, it's taking place, it's happening. Young people being coerced into sending nude images, nude videos on their smartphones. Likewise, the issue of pornography. The issue of pornography. How many a young person has become addicted to pornography because of the smartphone? Addicted to pornography because of the smartphone. And all of these things that are being mentioned, we can apply them to adults. Forget the child. We can apply them to adults. Forget the child. One particular study discussed addictions from the perspective of behavioral patterns and suggested that the addiction should not be looked at as something that you are addicted to, i.e. a substance. Rather, it should be looked at as a behavioral pattern, a pattern of behavior. A pattern of behavior wherein you cannot take yourself away from using something or exposing yourself to something. So for example, some of us may be addicted to food. Some of us may be addicted to spending money. Some of us may be addicted to TV. It's not necessarily about consuming something physical. It's not necessarily about consuming something physical. And brothers, can I just politely ask that whilst the khutbah is taking place, you try to listen to the khutbah. Why? Not for my sake, but for your sake. This is your deen. It's your deen. We have to show respect for our deen. It's not about respecting the khatib. And there's an issue today that we have, that if the khatib is not entertaining, or if the topic is not entertaining, or it's not immersive, then I can switch off and do something else. No. This is your deen. Can you switch off in salah because you're not being entertained by salah? No. It's from the sha'air of Islam. And especially if we have young people with us and they do not see us respecting the deen, how do we expect them to respect the deen? And it's distracting. It's distracting. We have to show some respect. So to go back, this same therapist, rehab specialist, she said, listen to this, around 2/3 of her patients were between the ages of 16 to 20 years old seeking treatment for addiction. And this is in a rehabilitation center in London. 2/3 of her patients were between the age of 16 to 20 dealing with addictions. Digital addictions being one of them. One particular study in America suggested that teenagers who spend 5 or more hours a day on electronic devices are 71% more likely to have a risk factor of suicide than those who spend 1 hour a day or less on a smartphone. Listen carefully and let me repeat it again. That teenagers who spend 5 or more hours a day on electronic devices are 71% more likely to have a risk factor of suicide than children or teenagers who spend 1 hour a day or less on electronic devices. When you leave the masjid, go to your well-being section on your phone and check your screen time. Check your daily screen time. And assess yourself before thinking about your children. One study, actually it was an article, the New York Times reporter Nick Bilton was interviewing the Apple co-founder and chief executive at the time, Steve Jobs, who we all know, about the iPad, and asked him, do your children like the iPad? What do they think of it? And he said, we limit how much technology our children use in our household. My children have not actually used the iPad. The founder of Apple and the designer or co-designer or the one who's heading the team of designers of the iPad, probably the most iconic smart device that is in use today, tablet-wise at least, did not allow his children to use the iPad. And a journalist commented in a book that he authored, speaking about such issues, addictions and so on and so forth. He said, it's as if Steve Jobs and his like are following the rule followed by drug dealers. Don't get high on your own supply. The drug dealer is not going to smoke or take his own drugs. Why? Because he loses money and he knows the dangers of it. But as the Prophet ﷺ said, كَمَا تُدِينُ تُدَانُ, as you treat others, you will be treated. So as a side point, how many drug dealers have we seen become drug fiends and drug addicts? As you treat others, you will be treated. But he's saying, just as the drug dealer does not get high on his own supply, these digital drug dealers do not get high on their own supply, and they definitely do not allow their children to get high on that which they're supplying. And if you go to any highly populated Muslim area, you will find that it's common practice for children to be on smart devices, smartphones. How many times I've seen, whilst on public transport, a Muslim mother or a Muslim father giving a tablet or a phone to their child to distract them for the journey. There was another recent article or research, it slips my mind currently. They were saying that modern TV programs, children's TV programs, modern children's media may be contributing towards the development of ADHD amongst children. Why so? Because these TV show designers, due to the millions and billions that they put into the research prior to producing their TV shows, have come to realize that the average young child, the average toddler's attention span does not go beyond 2 to 3 seconds. And so they want these children to be glued to their TV shows. Why? Because it's income for them. They want the children to be addicted to their product, just as a drug dealer wants his user to become addicted to his product. What did they start to do? They have started to change the image of the TV show every 2 to 3 seconds to keep the child's mind engaged and stimulated. And so try it, check it for yourself. Turn on a modern TV show for children, a modern child's cartoon, toddler's cartoon, and count the seconds between the changing of the images. And the individual that was discussing this said that this leads to the lack of ability for the child's mind to develop properly. Why? Because they become accustomed and acclimatized to being stimulated every 2 to 3 seconds. And so they lack the ability to focus on anything for a long time. And so we have to reflect and we have to consider the way that we are raising our children and the means that we are using to raise our children. And this discussion could go on. In universities today, how many students are producing essays using AI, ChatGPT and its like, to write essays? What's going to happen? You're going to have a generation of incompetent people. Smart devices, dumb owners. Capable devices, incapable and incompetent owners. You don't want to be treated by a doctor who hasn't actually qualified in his skill, rather he's been using technology to get him by. It's going to be disastrous. This is what's happening. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. الحمد لله وحده وصلوات ربي وسلامه على أشرف الأنبياء ومن تبعه وبعد. One of the co-founders of Facebook, he mentioned that technology and the apps produced for technology devices, etc., he mentioned they exploit a vulnerability in human psychology. God only knows what it's doing to our children's brains. These are the words of the designers. And yet we're happy for our children to sit on these devices all day long. If I would like some peace and quiet, put a tablet in my child's hands. And just ask yourself a question. Ask yourself, am I addicted to my smart device? Am I addicted to my smartphone? And if you would like to know the answer, leave your smartphone at home for a day and start to notice the want to check, the compulsion to check, the itch, which are all symptomatic of an addiction. If we continue to give these smart devices to our children, we are setting them up to fail. We are setting them up to fail. There are things on the internet that you will not imagine exist. You can't imagine they exist until you come across them online. And our children are being exposed to these things. And unfortunately, I assume that there are young people within our community that are addicted to their devices and that are addicted to things online as a product of being addicted to their device. In fact, I have seen marriages break down because of smartphones. Marriages break down because of smartphones. So what about our children? Would we give a glass of wine to our child? Would we give a drug to our child? Would we allow our child to smoke cigarettes? We wouldn't. But in reality, smoking cigarettes is far better than a smartphone. Far better than a smartphone. Why? Because the smartphone, it can affect our children's minds, our children's hearts, our children's deen, our children's physical state. The cigarette doesn't do such damage. But we don't look at the smartphone in such a way. And to end with a quote, Malcolm X, when speaking about the TV, he said, would you allow the devil to raise your child? Speaking about the TV with what, 2 or 3 channels. And as I said the other evening, the TV in comparison to the smartphone is like a tool for the righteous. The TV from the 60s and the 70s and the 80s, in comparison to the smartphone, it's like a device that was once used by the awliya because of the corruption and wickedness and evil that comes from these devices. Is it to suggest that we shouldn't benefit from the good? Yes, as adults who are responsible and who are able to control ourselves and know right from wrong, we should try to benefit from the good and keep away the evil. But a child does not know right from wrong. A child is unable to control themselves. No matter how mature that child is, a child's brain and innocence is not ready for the corruption and the filth that they will come across online. And just to show you the severity, I have come across children that became addicted to pornography on smart devices from the age of 10 years old. 10 years old. Their parents were clueless. Their parents were clueless. 10 years old, addicted to pornography. What does that mean? It means that this person is going to suffer in their adult life, and it's going to be very difficult for them to remain in a marriage unless they seek treatment for this addiction. So we have to be very, very, very cautious and careful when it comes to smartphones. And to go back to the point, why is it relevant to this time today, i.e. this month? Because many children are now going to school. And so sometimes as parents we say to ourselves, I need a phone for my child, let me track their location, I don't want them to feel out of place in school, all of their peers have smart devices and so on and so forth. The pain of feeling left out is far better than the pain of suffering due to addictions and filth and corruption of the soul that comes from these devices. And unfortunately, the non-Muslims are waking up faster than us. We who have a God-given framework of morality, we who should know the responsibility of parenting, are the ones that are slow to catch up when it comes to parenting today. Non-Muslims are starting to wake up. And so we have to wake up too. And again, this is only about the children. What about the adults and their addictions? I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to guide us and protect us from the filth that we can find on these devices in our time. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala purify our hearts and the hearts of our children and our families and the Muslim community in general. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد وارض اللهم عن أبي بكر وعن عمر وعن علي وعن عثمان وعن علي وعن سائر الصحابة أجمعين. اللهم تب علينا واعف عنا. اللهم طهر فساد قلوبنا واحفظنا يا رب العالمين. اللهم انصر إخواننا في فلسطين وفي أنحاء العالمين. اللهم انصرهم نصرا مؤزرا. اللهم ارفع راية الإسلام واجعلنا من الرافعين له وأقم الصلاة.